Hello, and welcome to Polygraph Pod. Polygraph hopes to shed clear perspective on cold cases and missing persons using all available factual information. This is purely a passion project, and we welcome you all to join us in the process while we begin this investigation. The grind of studying and cramming for tests began to slowly decline as students parted ways at the University of Wisconsin-Stout in the early spring of 1985. For 20-year-old student Kristin O'Connell, that meant but one thing: spring break. After a brutal winter spent agonizing over schoolwork, she was ready to shed her responsibilities and kick back, like any 20-year-old student would, in the sunny waters off of Florida. However, unlike most people her age, she didn't plan on meeting someone that would ultimately change her life, and in the process, end it. Kristen grew up in the city of Burnsville, Minnesota. Burnsville is located about 15 miles outside of the capital, Minneapolis. Here she attended high school at Burnsville High School and also worked at a local restaurant, Rack's Roast Beef. Kristen had lots of friends and was well liked according to her mother, Phyllis O'Connell, who still resides in Burnsville and has done so since 1978. As a young teenager, Kristen took to horses and horse riding. She was very fond of the animals and was even gifted a horse, which she took full responsibility for. She cared for it and rode it around her small cul-de-sac, where she learned everyone's names, from offering rides to all the neighborhood kids. As Kristen grew older and progressed through high school, she found herself wondering where her life would take her. She knew by the time she graduated that she would have to make a decision. Being from Minnesota and toughing out winter after winter, she decided her dream was to open a hotel in Hawaii. She thought it was the most beautiful place in the world. Coming from Minnesota, she would think that, her mother Phyllis said. With that goal in mind, Kristen declared herself at the University of Wisconsin-Stout campus, located in Menominee, Wisconsin, just a short hour and 15 minutes from her home in Burnsville. Here she would study hotel and restaurant management, and from there, it was all eyes on Hawaii. On all accounts, her studies went well. Kristen progressed through her first 2 years of college with little to no major issues. By the time her junior year rolled around, spring break was the only thing on her mind. Her roommate at the time was also interested in escaping the normality of Minnesota and embarking together towards sandy beaches and sunny shores. With that idea in mind, they decided on a small island called Captiva, just off the coast of southern Florida, nestled in the clear waters of the Gulf. On the morning of August 3, 1985, Kristen and her roommate set sail for Florida on what was expected to be a girls' spring break trip. However, after arriving on the island, Kristen found herself developing friendships quickly. This of course was in her nature, having bonded and made friendships throughout her entire life quite easily. One man in particular caught her attention: James Vermeesh. The two developed what has only been described as a mutual friendship, though her mother Phyllis has gone on to say that James had, just charmed her to death. The two talked throughout the rest of their vacation, and when the two roommates returned home, Kristen had intentions of seeing James again. The feeling was mutual, and without much thought or hesitation, Kristen booked a ticket to the Finger Lakes in New York State, where James was born and raised. Having never traveled solo before, let alone to see someone she had only known for such a brief amount of time, her parents expressed immediate concern. After enough talking and pleading, it was decided that the reunion was to be, and Kristen began packing for her next trip, seemingly just as quickly as she had returned from the last. On Monday, August 12th, Kristen arrived in the town of Ovid, a small village located near Seneca Lake in the Finger Lakes region of New York State. Her first day there, according to reports, was rather uneventful, as she was tired from traveling. On Tuesday, August 13th, she spent some time with James. What exactly they did or were planning on doing has never been directly made clear. What is known is that during the day the two were joined by a handful of James' friends. During this time, Kristen began to feel like there was less and less of a romantic connection between the two. Kristen had assumed this opportunity would allow the two to grow closer and see what, if anything, would come of it. However, she started to realize James and her led very different lives. James was said to have been a drinker. He would often have parties at his mobile home in Ovid or be found at the local bar with his friends. In fact, recently before the two met on vacation, James had moved to the mobile home right across the road from a bar. He was also reported to have been an occasional drug user, or had at least friends that partook in drug use around him, though if this was something minor, or something a little more serious, is unable to be ascertained. Kristen, on the other hand, led her life very much on the straight and narrow, according to Phyllis. In fact, her mother has said to reporters, she wasn't a drinker, she didn't take drugs. Kristen had even expressed to her mother in the past that she had issues developing long-lasting relationships with male counterparts because of her morals and desire to save herself until she was married. These things usually scared any interested parties away. Of course, most parents know their children best, yet we can often see only what we want to. While Kristen exceeded in every aspect in her life, it doesn't mean she never indulged when the opportunity presented itself, especially not at college. By the morning of August 14th, Kristen was ready to end her visit early. She had called her mother and explained this, and though she sounded upset, would not go into detail why. That same evening, James and his group were to have a party, and after spending some time at the bar, they decided to retreat to his mobile trailer, again located directly across the street. At some point, usually noted around 11:30 p.m. to 12 a.m., Kristen is said to have left the party. For what reason specifically, can't be determined, if it's even known at all, though some reports say that a guest at the mobile home party suggested smoking marijuana to the group, and the party happily agreed. Kristen, of course, being the lone exception. Other reports have stated the previously mentioned issue and suggestions of James being in a committed relationship, even before his trip to Florida, and his then current girlfriend arriving at the party questioning as to who Kristen was and why James had invited her there. Whatever the reason, Kristen left the trailer with no belongings and wearing no shoes, alone, into the night, in an unfamiliar place, very far from home. According to reports, two individuals from the mobile home, neither of them being James Vermeesh, went after Kristen to try and get her to come back to the party. The attempts, however, proved unsuccessful as they returned alone, with no sign of Kristen. The following day, August 15th, roughly 13 hours after she left the party, members of that party, never named as to who, reported Kristen missing, and from there the search began. Police came to investigate, and by 5 p.m. on August 16th, were able to locate the remains of Kristen. Her rain-soaked, lifeless body had been found sprawled out in the rear of a field less than 1 mile from James Vermeesh's trailer. Investigators found she had been stabbed several times, and her throat had been slit, but no signs of a sexual assault had been visible. She was fully clothed, but a struggle had obviously taken place. Immediate questioning began of the individuals who were present at the party the night prior, though getting answers as to who all was there proved to be quite difficult. The police almost immediately began stating that Kristen's murder seemed to be a crime of opportunity, that a random stranger had been driving down Route 139 just as Kristen left the party, and seized on the opportunity to kill for seemingly no reason. While not a total impossible theory, it seems to be a stretch in regards to the area Kristen was in, was not known for random acts of violence, and the probe of party guests seemed to be short-lived, with police finding it difficult to get answers and accuracy on who was even present. As for the man who's responsible for Kristen even being there, he immediately, and to this day, professes his innocence, and having nothing to do with Kristen's murder. However, several witnesses have reported seeing Kristen on the county road, walking in both directions, some saying she appeared to be speaking with someone in a car, as well as another stating they saw her walking back towards the trailer with two men following behind her. One report even notes hearing a blood-curdling scream sometime after midnight, but not able to ascertain from which direction, though none of these witness sightings seem to have panned out with aiding the investigation. Time has since ticked by, and now 36 years later, Kristen's case is as cold as the wet morning she was found, seeming to have been so since it happened, never to be solved. The case has had little movement and few updates since the day it occurred. However, there have been significant moments that seem to be overlooked, though they lead us down different rabbit holes and seem to divide the online community whether they hold any importance at all. In 1996, hairs on the body that were present at the scene of the crime led investigators to an inmate at Rikers Island in New York State, a one Gary L. Harris. Who exactly Gary Harris is and what he was serving for at the time could not be ascertained, nor could the results of the DNA testing. Gary was reported to be one of the few black members in the Ovid community, and in some online threads have even said he was rumored to be present at the party on the night in question. Though it seems that was all there is to it and no further information has been provided about this aspect of the investigation, it's possible to think that if one was in attendance that night, a follicle of hair could have found its way onto Kristen's clothing, though they never explicitly say where this hair was found. Even with the DNA evidence, there is no further mentions of Gary Harris in the investigation. It seemingly has hit a dead end. but other possible leads have emerged. There has been discussion done online in the early 2000s about the party that night. Old forums online from a now defunct website called Topics, T-O-P-I-X, reference a drug ring operating in the 1980s out of Ovid. There are multiple accusations of this mentioned throughout the forum and other places online. The website, Topics, is no longer in operation and hasn't been in quite some time. The site has been mentioned to be archived somewhere, but the only material referencing this case is available from shared screenshots to the various social media accounts in Kristen's honor. In the Topics archives, a local Ovid forum that started a discussion around marijuana turned into much more. In it, multiple users share info of this drug ring. They mention that almost everyone knew someone who was involved with it and that it even led to a young girl's death, that being Kristen. Several first names and nicknames are mentioned to be present at James Vermeesh's party that evening, and the story goes that because of her sobriety and turning down party offers, she was accused of being a narc. When she left the house, she was tailed and subsequently murdered. A promising lead and interesting theory is all this is, though. There is more to it as well, even accusing members of the police force or friends of the sheriff being involved in some capacity with this drug ring. But all we have at this time is hearsay, and it is difficult to decipher true statements from online gossip and rumors. As of July 2021, a private film crew took on the case to be covered in a documentary. They offered New York State Police to test the DNA in question, free of charge. However, New York State declined the offer in an effort to keep details of the case from the public eye. While we here at Polygraph understand that police work needs to be kept hidden from public forums, it has been over 35 years without a single answer. Why are the police not willing to hand over the information in Kristen's case, and why have Freedom of Information Act requests been denied, time and time again? Through it all, Kristen's mother, Phyllis, continues to search for answers. Several social media pages in Kristen's name provide updates and tidbits about the case. While there have been some residents from Ovid offering suggestions, as well as people commenting things that help the case in no way, the truth continues to elude us. We wanted to cover this case because it has become close to us. Traveling through the region, a sign caught our attention, looking for answers in the murder of Kristin O'Connell. After reading about the case online, we were confused as to why this case hasn't been solved yet, and realized that Phyllis, who comes every few years and puts up these signs herself, continues to fight for justice for her daughter. It seems like there should be an answer, and it is out there. Someone, in this case, lots of individuals, know what happened, and until someone speaks up, we will continue to do our best to cover this case. It's never our intentions to muddy the waters or provide rash opinions on cold case investigations, but in this case, some things are too hard to ignore. We hope to be as accurate as possible and provide only pertinent information to the case, but we are positive someone out there has the answer, and until they come forward, this case will remain cold.